Leopold and Loeb believed they could commit the ideal murder, but they made an error in judgment. University of Chicago students Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb decided to kill a boy to prove they could, but they were mistaken. The idea of committing the perfect crime has long captured the interest of criminologists. It seems nearly inconceivable that someone could get away with something without being discovered. After all, if it had been the ideal crime, there would never have been any evidence of anyone getting away with it. Nathan Leopold, 19, and Richard Loeb, 18, abducted and killed 14-year-old Robert Franks in Chicago in 1924. At the time, they developed an interest in the ideal crime. They were University of Chicago students. Nathan Loeb was interested in law and intended to enroll at Harvard following graduation. The psychology of German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche piqued Richard Leopold's curiosity. According to Nietzsche, some people possessed transcendent qualities, great talents, and superior intellect. Leopold believed he was one of these superior men, exempt from societal rules and morals. He ultimately persuaded Loeb that he was one as well. The two started committing minor theft to test their alleged immortality. They broke into a fraternity home at their university to take a typewriter, camera, and penknives. They then turned to arson when they received no response. The media, however, paid no attention to the crimes. Disappointed, Leopold and Loeb determined they required a more significant crime, the ideal crime that would garner widespread media attention. After 7 months of planning, they decided on kidnapping and murder. Everything needed to be flawless. They planned on how they would abduct and kill their victim, how to dispose of the body, how they would demand a ransom, and more. They only required a victim. Bobby Franks, who is 14 years old, was the ideal victim. Bobby was Loeb's second cousin, his neighbor, and the son of a wealthy watchmaker. For weeks, Leopold and Loeb followed his whereabouts and meticulously planned every aspect of his life. Then, on May the 21st, 1924, they carried out their lethal plot. Under a false identity, they rented a car and followed Bobby home from school, stopping to offer the young man a lift. Loeb hid in the rear seat, carrying a chisel. As Bobby sat in the front beside Leopold, he repeatedly hit Bobby in the head before dragging him to the rear and gagging him. Bobby Franks passed away. After placing his body on the floor, they traveled to Wolf Lake, located 25 miles from Chicago. They undressed Bobby and hid his body next to some railroad tracks. They bathed his face and the scar on his stomach with hydrochloric acid because it could identify him. After that, they departed and returned to Chicago as if nothing had occurred. They destroyed the typewriter used to write the ransom note and then continued with their usual activities. A few days later, a resident discovered Bobby Frank's body, much to Leopold's and Loeb's despair. A pair of spectacles was located close to the location after a thorough examination. They marked the start of Leopold and Loeb's fall. Only 3 people in the Chicago region, including Nathan Leopold, had purchased the same type of hinge found in the glasses. He admitted to dropping them during a recent bird-watching trip. Less than a week after the murder, the police found the remains of Leopold and Loeb's charred typewriter and detained them for formal questioning. The first twofold was Richard Loeb. He insisted that Leopold was the murderer and that he had arranged everything. Although Loeb had killed Bobby Frank, Nathan Leopold admitted to the police that it was his idea. They both stated that their only motivation was excitement, blaming their actions on their superhuman fantasies and pulling off the ideal crime. The subsequent trial captured the nation's attention and was the third to be dubbed the trial of the century. The famously opposed to the death penalty, Clarence Darrow was hired by the family. Leopold and Loeb confessed and pleaded guilty, so the trial was a sentencing hearing. Darrow presented a 12-hour-long closing statement to the court, asking not to put them to death. This speech would be his career's best speech. It succeeded. Leopold and Loeb received a sentence of 99 years plus life in prison. A fellow prisoner murdered Richard Loeb. Nathan Leopold was granted freedom after 33 years for being a model inmate and improving the educational program in the facility. After being freed, he wrote an autobiography and used the proceeds to launch a foundation to assist young people with emotional problems. Nathan passed away in Puerto Rico at age 66 using a false name. Leopold and Loeb were notorious in the history of criminology for their attempt and the endless imitations, books, and films it sparked, even though the perfect crime was never committed. My thoughts are left to Bobby and his family. What had they must have went through? What would Bobby have become? His children, his grandchildren, all taken away seemingly because of a thrill. What are your thoughts?